My name is Sami Arif, and I'm going to be doing a presentation on COVID-19 and the resulting economic shocks. So, in response to the COVID-19 outbreak, governments and public health authorities around the world have implemented confinement and mitigation measures such as social distancing. These measures effectively led to the controlled shutdown of entire sectors of the economy, especially those that supply economic activities and services involving high physical contact and other people, such as restaurants, hairdressers, airlines, etc. On the one hand, authorities forced many such establishments to close and send their workers home. On the other hand, consumers themselves also reduced their consumption of these services. Regardless of public health policy recommendations, these workers in some services lost their jobs and incomes, and they also reduced their purchases of other goods and services. This, combined with the uncertainty about the evolution of the pandemic, leads to a reduction in demand for goods and services across the board. For this reason, most economists would agree that economic effects of the outbreak and mitigation measures combine aspects of so-called supply and demand shocks. So moving on, I think we need to figure out what are the supply side shocks and what are the demand side shocks. Like, we need to understand what these two are in order to understand the effects that have been caused due to the COVID-19 virus, and also how it has impacted the economic activity of not just our country, but of like the entire globe, right? So when we're discussing the demand side shock, a demand side shock, as the slide says, a COVID-19 contributed heavily to the fall in income levels, right? Worldwide decrease in consumer expenditure was resulted because of this. There is a decrease in investment expenditure. Because of transnational lockdowns and closure of airlines, there's uncertain environment and animal spirits. A demand side shock then is something that reduces consumers' ability or willingness to purchase goods and services at a given price, right? People staying at home and not going to restaurants or movie theaters for the fear of contracting the virus is an example of a demand side shock. Additionally, as service workers lose their jobs, they may stop purchasing other goods such as cars or appliances, which can also be thought of as a demand shock in those specific sectors. On the other hand, we also need to understand what are supply side shocks. So, in light of the COVID-19 and how the pandemic has affected everything around us, the global supply chains have been disrupted. This is because borders have been closed down and there has been slow trade, which is, which does not allow for the same economic activity to continue at the same level as it was before, right? Therefore, industries that haven't been able to work remotely have been affected most because of this. The government policies, for example, to close down factories has also had an impact on production rates and how supply is less, and also because of the fact that there is a lot of uncertainty in the market. Demand side shocks as well. Okay, so so figure one plots the shock decomposition we estimated for March 2020. This was when the lockdown began for the growth rate of hours work. Okay, so the sum of the red and blue bars is the sum of these red and blue bars is basically um, is the percentage point change in the growth rate of hours worked relative to its historical average. The size of the red bar relative to the blue bar shows how important supply shocks were relative to the demand shocks in that sector. So we have different sectors here. We have mining and lodging, constructing, manufacturing, wholesaling, etc. And for each of them, what this figure shows is which one of these industries or sectors of the economy were affected more by the supply side shocks or the demand side shocks. Okay, so the first sector is total private employment, and our results in this table show that two-thirds of the decline in hours were attributed to supply shocks. Okay, so two-thirds of this effect here is due to the supply shocks, right? And so by far, we need to understand that the most affected sector was leisure and hospitality, where the less here leisure and hospitality is the most affected sector because of the COVID-19, right? And where this is because the growth rate of hours worked fell by almost 10 percentage points. Again, supply over here played a slightly larger role than demand. And while most sectors experienced negative supply shocks, some sectors experienced positive demand shocks as well. This is true for this is true for some of these sectors. For example, retail trade likely benefited as people stopped going to restaurants and started buying more groceries and cooking at home, right? So as you can see, retail trade here, right, it has a positive demand shock, right? And that is because and so we need to understand that different sectors within an economy work in different ways. And so while we are trying to understand supply and demand shocks in the previous slides, we need to decompose them as well and see how each of them has an effect on on different sectors of the economy, right? So it is not necessarily it is not necessary it is not necessarily that supply and demand shocks are going to be negative. In some instances, like we just explained, in retail trade for that matter, demand shocks are bound to be positive as well, right? So the information sector, on the other hand, is also something that has benefited, likely due to the increased interest of firms by telework software and arrangements, right? So here I think it's important to understand that what supply side shocks and demand side shocks are, and then to decompose how our economy and how the different sectors in the economy, right, they are how the different sectors in the economy are affected because of it. Okay, moving on, we need to understand, moving on, the supply side shocks and demand side shocks. Okay, so this is something that I drew, which is here the real GDP against price, right? So we have the long run aggregate supply, and then we have the short run aggregate supply, and then we have the aggregate demand. And we need to understand something, that we need to understand how supply side shocks come into play and have an effect here. So a supply side shock basically is something that reduces the economy's ability to produce goods and services at given prices, right? So public health authorities and employers preventing service workers from doing their jobs can be thought of as a supply shock, right? So we have discussed this before as well. Now we need to understand how this has an impact on the economy, right? And so there are two things that happen. There is a fall in aggregate demand and the Phillips curve as well, which we need to understand to explain inflation and to explain how the overall unemployment rate has been affected due to COVID, right? So due to COVID-19, the side shocks are a rise in unemployment rate, decrease in wealth of people, and shutdown and slowdown beginning in the economy. These demand shocks are negative when it causes aggregate demand to decrease. So here we see that the aggregate demand was here originally at AD0, and the aggregate demand then decreases and goes down to AD1, right? It affects negatively to the production as shifts to the left. So as AD shifts to the left, what happens essentially is the production goes from YF to Y1, right? And it makes real output to decrease and price level to decrease. And due to this, corresponding inflation rate decreases to become negative in the scenario. Due to the decrease in AD, firms produce less and they lay off workers as well. So essentially what happens is there is more unemployment, right? And these developments in the AD and AS model is something that we need to understand to make sure what is happening because of these demand side shocks, right? So just like we spoke, to summarize, what happens is aggregate, there's lesser demand for goods, right? So let's suppose someone who is used to going out a lot, right, to restaurants, etc., and fine dining, right, because of the COVID and because of the lockdown, you cannot do so. There's, even if you can, I think for someone who has to deal with sick people at home, or who has to deal with people who has to deal with a job loss, is less likely to consume goods, right, such as fine dining for that matter, or even like buying more electrical appliances such as a new phone or a new laptop, right? So what happens essentially is it reduces the aggregate demand. So when aggregate demand is decreases, it causes a decrease in the overall output as well, right? And so when this happens, this has an effect on the unemployment rate as well, which is something that we are going to discuss later on. But however, before moving on, we also need to understand the supply side shocks too. So this is one instance where the aggregate demand sort of like falls as well, right? But the short run aggregate supply also, right, that also falls down because of the effects of the economy due to COVID-19. So what happens essentially is when demand is decreased, the supply decreases as well, right? Because companies and firms realize that they do not need to supply the economy with the same amount of goods because there are not enough people willing to spend money on them, right? So when this happens, the aggregate short run supply, the supply also decreases, right? So what essentially is the overall outcome of this is like we've discussed, due to decrease in AD, right, and decrease in aggregate supply as well, firms produce less and they lay off workers too, right? So unemployment rate also increases, and these developments in the AD and AS model are shown in this slide. And what also we need to understand is how this translates into the Phillips curve, right? So coming to the inflation, right, it is very high due to the unexpected stop in the production. In light of COVID-19, there's an unexpected stop in production, and this gives rise to a very high inflation rate. But at the same time, the demand for the product is as usual, or maybe more, due to the unexpected panic. So the inflation rate shoots up in what sense or whatever, right? However, just as it shoots up, it remains constant. So if there's one thing that remains constant here, okay, fine, the economy is affected by COVID-19, right? We have an effect on aggregate demand and aggregate supply. But what also ends up happening is that, because of the effect on aggregate demand and aggregate supply, we have an inflation rate. The inflation rate rises, but as inflation rate rises, and because of the effect of aggregate demand and aggregate supply, it then remains constant here, right? So what changes here, the most seriously affected area then is unemployment, right? Which with unemployment, which increases significantly. So if we are here, the unemployment, right, it goes from U0 to U1, right? So some of the countries in recent times around us have been expected to reach the unemployment rate as 50% due to the lockdown and jobless in a pandemic. So right? And so we need to understand how the long run Phillips curve, it remains the same, it is constant. But to understand how the Phillips curve shifts, it shifts to the right, right? Because there is an increase in unemployment rate, right? But the overall inflation, even though it increases from it has increased from what it was before COVID, it remains constant after a surge, right? So this is these graphs are basically just theoretical representation of what goes on in the economic market, right? But what we need to do is, right, we need to understand this through real life examples. So here is an example. um, Here is an example case study for Pakistan, right? So while horrors of the rising number of COVID-19 cases and sudden painful deaths in isolation wards instill fear into the bravest of hearts, the pandemic-induced economic security is now pushing families to the edge, right? So here, what we're gonna do is, we're gonna look at how these different these different sectors of the economy have been affected by COVID-19, and one of the major variables we're gonna look at is unemployment, right? So like elsewhere, we need to understand that the protection and creation of jobs is perhaps the second biggest challenge after the health crisis in Pakistan. The neglect of this issue in the current environment may prove to be suicidal, as dismissing the coronavirus as a sham. Learning from the lessons of the first wave, right? Prime Minister Imran Khan decided in principle not to impose a complete lockdown during the current rising wave, and instead identify COVID-19 hotspots for a smart lockdown. The premier announced categorically that factories and businesses must follow SOPs to keep the wheels of the economy turning for shielding both lives and livelihood. During the first lockdown in April that stretched for 3 months, businesses were offered incentives via cheap loans to cover wage bills and retain workers. Beyond that, the government at all tiers seems to have done little in the way of keeping itself abreast of the labor market situation for appropriate policy interventions. In the absence of credible data on unemployment, the Pakistan Institute of Development Economics for Change made a commendable effort to project COVID-19 triggered unemployment. This is something that I have taken from their annual report as well. In a series of COVID-19 bulletins using modern research techniques on occupational employment counts based on data from Labor Force Survey 2017-2019, the Pakistan Institute of Development Economics dissected and deduced valuable trends. It tried to capture the transformation in the labor markets during the pandemic, identified vulnerable sectors, projected probable job losses at different levels of the health crisis intensity, and extrapolated findings to shape province-wise expected job cuts beside other dynamics. Right. So in this slide, we got to see how in real life economy, like in the case of Pakistan, right, we need to understand how different sectors have been affected because of COVID-19. So here, if we see, we look at how the vulnerable unemployment, right? So agriculture is something that faces a very high risk of unemployment in this case, right? On the other hand, is manufacturing, because it involves a lot of person-to-person transaction. Especially same goes with wholesale and retail trade, right? So, we need to, just as we understand how the supply side shocks and how the demand side shocks have an impact on the economy, we also need to understand how they have an impact on factors such as unemployment, right? And also then how that comes into play in real life economies, right? So, and how that comes into play in real life economies. Moving on, we also need to understand the oil price shock due to COVID-19, right? So the impact of declining oil prices and COVID-19 on oil-based economy in general is that it has affected global economy, right? COVID-19 has affected global economy. It has taken many lives and also made a great loss to global economy with its serious consequences. Due to this pandemic, the prices of the oil are declining due to less production and transportation restrictions among the countries. So restrictions on international flights, for example, have also reduced the consumption of the fuel in a great manner. It reduces the demand and price of the oil, right? It has destroyed the economic growth of the oil based companies, because there is comparatively very less demand of oil, which reduce the price of oil. It has diversified the oil-based companies to non-oil-based companies because it was causing losses to these countries because production cost was more than sale price. Trains, buses, and other types of transportation were also not running due to this pandemic, so it affected the consumption of oil very badly. So even here, when we understand the context, right, it has an impact on both demand and supply side. So how is demand side affected and how is supply side affected? We need to understand it. So demand side, right, containment measures and economic disruptions have led to significant drop in demands, right? Because there's no economic activity, there's no transportation, some factories are even shutting down, and so the demand of oil, right, there is a significant drop in that. The supply side at the same time is there is failure of producing countries to collectively, because there is like a decrease in supply, there is also a decrease in the supply of oil, right? So what these countries are doing is, because only the countries such as the UAE, which can sustain itself to the point where even if it's not getting huge profits out of its production, are continuing with their production of oil, whereas other countries, right, which are not so economically well off, and they have greater losses to bear with, they have discontinued with their supply of oil, which means that both supply and demand are affected because of COVID, right? I think, in the course as well, we studied something similar when we were discussing the oil price shock in the Keynesian model, right? So we were understanding how, in the 1970s, how the oil prices rose, right? How the oil, there was this a deficit of oil, and how the OPEC countries sort of like came together to stabilize prices. And this is what happened, right? So the oil prices increased and the FE line moved towards the left, right? So this sort of like, decreased the output from Y1 to Y2. But what then also happened is when oil prices increased, right, it also drove up the price level, right? So when price level was driven up, all right. So the LM curve, right? The LM curve moved to the right hand side as well. So LM curve moved from LM1 to LM2, right? This identified the change in oil prices, which drove up prices. However, over time, what essentially happened was to, for the economy to reach equilibrium, the price level fall, right? So we need to understand that this caused the LM curve from LM2 to move down to LM3. So this is now where the equilibrium was, right? And this is what comes down to play when we understand the change in prices, and we understand how price levels are like come up, right? So now what we need to understand is what happens to these lines, what happens to the changes in graph, the interest rate, the output in light of COVID, right? So one significant difference is that oil prices significantly dropped in COVID, right? So whereas here oil prices increase, so what will happen is the opposite of what we see in this. So this is something that we saw in class, in our lectures, right, where this example was given, how in the 1970s, the world ran into an oil crisis, right? But what happens here due to COVID is, because we need to apply our understanding of what went down, we need to apply, how in the current context these graphs can be seen, and how can we anticipate the changes that are going to happen, right? So with the price here, what happened here, this graph gives you an explanation of what happens when oil prices increase. Whereas what happened in COVID is oil prices decreased, and so now the opposite of what has happened here will happen in our graph. I think I was supposed to draw the graph, but I think I am not technological. I don't have a pen of sorts to do that here. But I'll just explain it to you how, the line from FE1 will then move shift towards the right, right? So they will shift towards the right, and when that happens, okay, there will be a decrease in the increase in a decrease in the price level, and then eventually what happens is that the price level will fall, and so we will have a new equilibrium as compared to the equilibrium here. Even in here we had a new equilibrium, but because of the oil price changes due to COVID, we will have a newer equilibrium, and the changes that are being described here will be exactly opposite of what happened in COVID-19. I just want this graph here to be as a reference for us to understand how things are going to be about, what is going to happen to the interest rate, and more importantly, what is going to happen in the output, right? So this is something that was important for us to understand. And then I think one more thing that we learned from this overall sort of discussion of supply side shocks and demand side shocks is to understand, the implications as well, right? So both reduction in supply and demand lower real GDP. However, for policymakers, separating down demand shortfalls from supply constraints is important because they require different remedies. Treatments for inadequate demand, such as lowering interest rates or increasing in government spending, exacerbate problems of inadequate supply, leading to shortages and inflation. Similarly, treatments for inadequate supply, such as Relaxing lockdowns or providing liability exemptions applied to demand constrained sectors are effective at restoring activity. Most recessions are broad based in the same sense that all sectors reduce their output simultaneously. And accordingly, the basic textbook macroeconomic model, the ASAD model, aggregates all sectors of the economy into one. To tell supply and demand shocks apart in this model, one need to simply look at the behavior of the price level. If output falls and the price level rises, there was an aggregate supply shock. On the other hand, if output falls and prices fall, then there was an aggregate demand shock. A simple ASAD model suggests that therefore there must have been a negative aggregate supply and a negative aggregate demand shock, resulting in large movements in real GDP with minimal changes in the price level. Unfortunately, the basic ASAD model then reaches this conclusion by making radical and perhaps misleading simplifications. And unlike ordinary recessions where depressed economic activity is broad based and price move in tandem, the COVID 19 crisis affected output and prices differently in different sectors. Although almost all sectors reduced production, some sectors raised prices while others cut down, right? So here's what we need to understand as well. I mean, like to sum it all off, we supply models that we have in our economy. They are a very simplistic definition of what happens in the economy, right? And because different sectors are affected differently, we need to like look beyond what's happening and what is presented by these graphs. And I think this is something that's important for us to understand. Okay, what are we learning in class? Is supportive. We are bound to like expand upon that, right? And this is has been my incentive here in my sort of like idea here in this presentation to expand upon the models that we have learned in class and to see how they apply to everyday economic activity of our country. And so before I finish off, some questions that are left unanswered, and I think maybe it's time that we think about these questions as well. Okay, how can we come about the shortcomings of the basic ASAD model, like I've just explained, to incorporate the different sectoral constraints? I think this is something that we need to think about. Do we need to have like a devise a new model? Do we need to like model everything specifically according to different sectors? But how do we holistically look at this, right? So this is something that I feel like it should be taken into consideration. And I feel like because of me raising these questions, if you have anything to say, if you have a solution in mind, I'd be open to these questions. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope whatever I said made sense. I hope you're able to grasp the concept of how COVID-19 has affected the supply side and the demand side shocks, and how the overall economy has been functioning and can function in light of the economic restraints of COVID. Thank you so much.